It's not in my binder.
You lost your.
No, like I don't know
I
where.
don't know where it went. Like every paper that you make is so
There's a giant spider right there, and he killed it.
no meaning. Like,
Oh, I would have killed it too. Doesn't bother
Like
me.
it's actually gone.
well, grab these papers. Mr. Coffee, quick.
No fresh out packets.
I just write down what we learned. You got paper. Cheers.
All right, so okay, I'm on page 38. So yesterday we talked about graphing rationals. Now we need to solve rational equations. All right, so first off, just to review, what values of x will make the fraction undefined? So how do I find that?
You have to do the denominator equal to 0.
Set the denominator equal to 0, solve for x. So x cannot equal what here? 2. X cannot equal what here? Now, this one's a little bit different. So it's a quadratic. Remember how I said that sometimes you can have more than one value that you can't have. That'll make it undefined. So there's two ways you can go about this. You can either solve it by taking a square root, or you can solve by factoring it. Which one do you want me to do? Square root. All right. So if I add the 1 over, I got x squared is equal to 1. Square root both sides. X is equal to what? That means x cannot equal the set of -1 or 1. Which makes sense because if you plug -1 in, -1 squared is +1, -1, that's 0. And obviously 1 squared is 1, -1 also 0. So that's an example of where there's actually two excluded values. So if we were to graph that function, there would actually be two vertical asymptotes, which can happen. But I wouldn't ask you guys to graph one of those. That's more of a math 3 type thing. The excluded value part will. The graphing part for like a function like this one specifically, no. All right, so for solving rational equations, the only ones that we're solving are the proportion type ones. So there are two types of rational equations. There's the proportions, and then there's the least common denominator ones. You won't learn least common denominator until math 3. But the proportion ones are pretty straightforward because you get to do what you guys always want to do with anything with a fraction, cross multiply. Then you solve the resulting equation, and you got to check for extraneous solutions. So we talked about this with radical equations. What does extraneous solution mean? It's a solution that doesn't work. In this case, it would make it undefined. So, in other words, more often than not, an extraneous solution will give you 0 in the denominator. It will give you a denominator equal to 0, which we know to be undefined. So, really, you just have to plug it back into the x values in the denominator because the numerator doesn't really matter. The denominator is what you can't have be 0. All right, so it's actually a quicker check than the rationals. Not rational, radicals. So let's try some of these. So this first one, very easy peasy. You start by cross multiplying. So I have 5 times x minus 2 is equal to 3 times x plus 4. How do I solve now? Distribute on both sides. So I have 5x minus 10 is equal to 3x plus 12. Then what do I do? Subtract the 3x to one side, add the 10 to the other. So this will be 2x is equal to 22. So what's x equal to? 11. Now, do a quick check back in for the x's in the denominator. 11 plus 4, that's obviously not 0. 11 minus 2, obviously not 0, so it works. So that's what I mean by do a quick check for extraneous. Yes.
Does it have to work on both fractions?
Yes. So if you get one fraction that has a denominator 0, it's automatically extraneous. So it doesn't have to be both that gives you 0. It just has to give you one fraction where the denominator is 0, because then it makes the whole equation invalid. So you got to check both x's. And again, only in the denominators. If there's an x in the numerator, don't even bother. It's not going to do anything. It's the denominators that we have to be worried about. All right, example 2. Cross and cross. So I have x minus 3 times x minus 4 is equal to 2 times 1. So the left side, what do I technically have to do to multiply that through? You either got to do a box method or a quick FOIL. So if you do the box method, and I'm not going to do the box method, I'm just going to say that you need to do the box method or FOIL. But if you do the box method, you'll get x squared minus 7x plus 12. And it's going to be equal to 2. So the last one was a linear equation. What type of equation is this? Quadratic. So how do I solve it? Get one side equal to 0. Good. So x squared minus 7x plus 10 is equal to 0. Now, again, these should be factorable. So all the ones that I should give you are factorable. So if you do a quick factor on this, you should get x minus 2, x minus 5 is equal to 0. How do I finish up solving? Set them both equal to 0 and solve. So x is equal to 2, x is equal to 5. Now, I really need to check just this one denominator here because that's the only one with an x in it. 2 minus 4, obviously not 0. 5 minus 4, obviously not 0. They both work. So x is equal to the set of 2, 5. Yes? So again, sometimes you end up with an extraneous if you have more than one solution, or even just one solution. Sometimes you don't. All right. Let's skip example 3 and go to example 4. Okay, a little bit bigger, but still not too bad. Start by crossing. I have 2 times x squared minus 1 is equal to 1 times x squared plus x minus 2. Distribute to both sides. Obviously, the right side's going to stay exactly as it is because we're just multiplying by 1. So this will be 2x squared minus 2 is equal to x squared plus x minus 2. It's clearly a quadratic, so what do I have to do? Move it to one side. My recommendation, move the side that doesn't have the bigger x squared. The bigger x squared you want to leave alone because you want your x squared to be positive at the end of the day. So I want to subtract x squared, subtract x, and add 2. So subtract x squared, subtract x, add 2. That goes away. I get x squared minus x. The 2's cancel out is equal to 0. Now, this is a pretty easy factor. How do I factor that? Right, it's a GCF of x, which leaves you with x minus 1 equals 0. So remember, you got to set both of those x's equal to 0. So I have x equal to 0, x minus 1 equal to 0. So x is equal to 0, x is equal to 1. Now, plug them back in and do a quick calculation. If I plug 0 in for x in the first denominator, 0 squared 0 minus 1, that's negative 1, so we're fine. 0 in the second denominator, 0 plus 0 minus 2, that's negative 2, so we're fine. But the 1 squared is 1, minus 1 is what? 0. So 1 is extraneous because 1 squared minus 1 is equal to 0. So because it gave me 0 in this first fraction, it's automatically extraneous. We throw it out.
Wait, but they're both undefined.
No, they're not.
Wait,
Zero's
so those are the solutions, right? Because x squared plus x. That gives you
0 squared is 0 minus 1. That's negative 1. It works. 0 squared plus 0.
No,
That's
like, what do you do when you make x equal to 1? Don't you get undefined on both sides?
I mean, you will, but as long as you get 1, you don't even have to worry about it. So as long as you test 1, you don't have to bother testing the other. It's automatically extraneous. So your answer is x equals 0. So again, as long as you get one fraction that's 0, at least one, it could be both, it's automatically extraneous. We don't want undefined anywhere, even if it's undefined on both sides. All right, try example 5 on your own. Make sure you check for extraneous. All right, you guys ready? Give 1 more minute. All right, check your answer. So both 1 and 3 did work when we plugged them back into the denominator. So they both are part of the solution set. Any questions on example 5? All right. Now, example 6, we're not going to do it, but I just want to bring something up. So, if one of the sides is not a fraction, what do? Put it over 1 and then cross multiply. So again, we're not going to do it, but just know if one side doesn't have a fraction, put it over 1 and then cross multiply. So that should not deter you. All right. Okay. Any questions on solving equations with proportions? All right. Last thing, 5.8. So this is direct and inverse variation. And again, it's really easy. It's just a formula. We already did 5.7. All right. So in math, you do direct and indirect variation, or direct and inverse variation. Now, direct comes from a linear graph. Typically, you'll see it as y equals mxb plus mx plus b. So the way it typically works is as x increases, y increases. That's typically what direct variation means. It means those two constants, if they have a direct variation with each other, that means as one goes up, the other one goes up. Inverse, on the other hand, is more of a rational equation. So y would equal 1 over x. Meaning, as x increases, y decreases. So they have an inverse relationship to each other. That means as one goes up, the other one's going down, and vice versa. And honestly, these get chalked up to just very simple formulas. It's just a matter of multiplying and dividing. So let's look at some of these. So typically, you'll see as y varies directly as x, meaning you have this formula, y is equal to kx, where k is a constant. So the k is constant. If you looked at the linear function, k would typically be what your slope is. And we're assuming that your b or y-intercept is equal to 0. Now, really easy to solve. All you do is just give x and y, plug them into the equation. So you'll typically be given an x and y value to go together. Solve for k, write the formula with k, and use the formula to answer any questions. So that may sound weird, but you'll see in the example. So the score on my test varies directly as the number of hours I study. So if I study for 2 hours, I will earn a 90% on the test. What will I earn if I study for 3 hours? So what it's saying is that the percent I make on the test, or my score, is equal to some factor k times the number of hours I study. So in other words, your score is your y value, k is your constant, x is your study. So we're going to set it up based off of what we currently have. So the 90% of the 2 hours are my x and y respectively that go together. So we're going to use those two to solve for k because we need it to answer the actual question. So if I want a 90, I studied for 2 hours, so 2 times k. How do I solve for k? Divide by 2. So k would equal 45. Now, we're going to use this to now answer this question. So that means that my score is equal to 45x, or the number of hours I study. So that means that if I study for 3 hours, y would equal 45 times 3. So what's 45 times 3? 135. That teacher must have some serious extra credit. Nope.
You should give us that opportunity. If we can prove that 1 equals 0, then we get.
No. So that's typically how direct works. This is the formula that you need to know. And typically, whatever they state first is your y. Whenever they state second is your x. Typically. Right, but you can also kind of infer it. Inverse variation is the opposite, meaning that you'll see y varies inversely as x. So this is the general formula. Again, k is the constant. So in this case, if I look up here, let's say I replace this 1 with an a. That a would be k. Now, a lot of times this version is confusing. So what I tell students is think about it as x times y equals k, which makes sense because if you solved for k of this equation, you multiply x to both sides, and the x on the side with the k would cancel out. So this is more the formula you need to know. It's a little bit easier. So again, same process. Given the x and y, plug them into the equation, solve for k, write the formula of k filled in, use the formula to answer any questions. So the number of books in my backpack varies inversely as the size of each book, which that makes sense because obviously the size of the book can show you how many books you can fit in your book bag. The larger the book, the less books you can put in. Each book is 150 inches cubed. And I can fit 4 books in my backpack of that size. How many books can I carry if each book is 100 inches cubed? So again, we're going to use x times y is equal to k. And the reason I like using that one is so basically you don't have to figure out which one goes in the denominator and which one goes in the numerator. You just, multiply them together to get k. So I'm going to do 4 times 150, and that's going to equal k. So what's 4 times 150?
600.
So 600 is equal to k. Thus, x times y will equal 600. So we were given 100 for x. So if I have 100, y is equal to 600. That means y is how many books can I fit in my bag? 6. They're pretty easy. There's like maybe 4. 33.
How many questions?
33. 10 short answer, the rest are multiple choice. All right. Now, you may also see them as problems like this. You may just see like they just give you values and they just want you to find x or y. So y varies directly with x, and they say y is 10 when x is 5. And then they want us to find y when x is 7. So directly, y equals k times x. Because it said directly. So if I plug in the values I got for y and x, so 10 is equal to 5k, not x. So what's k equal to? 2. Thus, y is equal to 2x. So if I plug in 7 in for x, using that k value, what's y? 14. Now, y varies inversely with x. Y is 3, x is 6. Find y when x is 9. So we have xy is equal to k. So that means I have 3 times 6 is equal to k. That's 18 is equal to k. So if I rewrite that, x times y is equal to 18. So if I plug in the 9 in for this x, I have 9y is equal to 18. What's y have to equal?
2.
2. There's like 4, I think. Now, the rest of them is pretty evenly mixed. So there's the least amount is definitely the variation, and the others are pretty even. So basically, if you look at the review, the distribution is about the same. All right. Now, we're going to skip example 3 and 4. But another thing I want to talk about is joint variation. Joint variation is exactly what it sounds like. It means that, one, you have more than 2 variables. You actually have x, y, and z. And it's saying that, like, you know, as one goes up, one's going to go up, the other one's going to go down. So the way you write out joint variation is y is equal to kxz. So a common one that you'll see with that is a lot of times there's area or volume formulas. Those are actually joint variations. So for example, area of a triangle. What's the formula for area of a triangle? 1/2 base times height. 1/2 is actually your k value. That's always going to be the constant. Whereas your base and height is your x and z. And your area is your y. So if you think about it, let's say that we had a base and height of 10, a base of 10 and a height of 2. And obviously that area is going to be 10. All right. Now, let's see what happens if we change the base to 5, but we're going to keep the area as 10. All right. So if we change the base to 5, but we're going to keep the area as 10, that means I have 10 is equal to 1/2 times 5 times height. So in other words, I made the base lower. So what do you think is going to happen to the height?
It's going to go higher.
It may get higher. So this is 10 times 5/2 h. So that would be, you got to multiply both sides by 2/5. So 2/5 times 10 over 1, that's 20 over 5, so that's 4. So your height is equal to 4, which did get higher than 2. So that's what it means. It means as one goes up, the other one's going to go down, and vice versa, especially if they stay the same. All right, so just know that joint variation, and I don't think I asked you this on your test, but it is on your journal. Joint variation is this: y equals kxc. All right, so let's see if you guys can figure out which one's direct, inverse, or joint. So the first one, the number of oranges in a box varies as the size of each orange. So do you guys think that's going to be direct, inverse, or joint? So think about it logically. Let's say you had like a 6 by 6 by 6 box. All right. Will the size of the oranges affect how many oranges you can fit in that box?
Yeah,
Yes. How?
because
If
like
they're
the
smaller,
bigger
you
they
can
are,
fit more. If they're bigger, you can fit smaller.
So if they're smaller, you can fit more in the box. If they're bigger, you can fit less in the box. So what kind of variation is that? Inverse. It's inverse. Joint is when it's doing it at the same time.
Yeah.
Inverse is when no matter it flip flops either way. The distance I run varies as my speed and the amount of time I run. So your distance varies based off your speed and the amount of time you run.
is that joint?
So this one actually is kind of joint because your distance and your speed. So obviously, like if you're running the same distance, like say you're running a mile and you were going like 2 miles an hour. That means that the time that you take is a certain amount. Let's say you can do it in like 20 minutes. All right. Now let's say you ran that same mile going 1 mile an hour. That means that instead of 20 minutes, you probably took 40. Okay. So, but that also means that if you switch those around and change the distance, that can also depend on the amount of time you run and the speed. So this one's actually joint. So the number of hours that the painters spend painting of your house varies as the number of painters. So you think that's direct, inverse, or joint? Sure. There's only 2 variables, so it can't be joint. Joint has 3 variables.
Direct.
So the number of hours they spend depends on the number of painters. So think about it. If you have more people, do you think it'll take less time or more time? Less time. So it's inverse. Because if you have more people, it takes less time. Whereas if you have less people, it takes more time. So the amount of my paycheck varies the number I work.
Inverse? So you get less money if you work. Wait, no. Direct.
Yeah, it's definitely direct. Because think about it. So like let's say you worked a part-time job where you're getting paid 10 an hour. And you get paid by the week. If you work 40 hours that week, you get $400 that week, not including taxes. But if you work 50 hours that week, you get $500. So you get more money the more hours you work. So that's definitely direct. The height of a child under the age of 10 varies as the age of the child.
Direct.
This is direct.
Yeah. So,
I'm glad you added the extra.
because by 10, after 10, like that's when it starts getting weird because, you know, depending on the growth spurts. But usually in the single digit years, it's pretty constant. So the volume of a cylinder varies as the radius and height of the cylinder. So that's definitely joint. There's 2 variables. So the volume of the cylinder is equal to pi r h, r squared h. So in reality, it's actually joint because there's 2 different variables. And again, these are just the general formulas that you'll see. But the ones that I recommend knowing the best are this one, yes, this one, and this one. Because honestly, they're all versions of each other. So like all the direct formulas, they're all versions of y equals kx. All the inverse formulas are all versions of xy equals k. All the joints are some version of y equals kxc. All right. So let's see if you can determine whether they're direct, inverse, or joint by looking at the function. So x
How'd that
so xy is equal to 40. Would that be direct, inverse, or joint? That inverse.
I knew inverse, I just forgot the word.
Because 40 would be your k. So 12, v over lw is equal to 7. That's joint. There's more than 2 variables. So if you have 3 variables, it's joint. I don't think any of those are. It's more so the findings. What about the next one?
That's like direct. Inverse.
That one's direct, because if you multiply the x over, we get negative 6 equals y. What about 13?
That's inverse.
That's inverse. You multiply the b over, it's a times b equals 10. All right, last one, application problems. So if you work 40 hours in a week and make $800, how much will you make if you work 60 hours? First off, is this situation describing a direct or indirect situation? It's a direct situation.
Do we have to solve them, or do we have to like know what
You-
they are?
You would have to know what they are because they're not going to flat out say it.
But like, so will we have to say what they are?
No, it's not going to ask what they are. It's going to ask how you solve it. But knowing it does help a little bit. So y is equal to kx. So if you have $800, 40k. So if you divide by 40, your constant's equal to what? 20. So that means y is equal to 20x. So if you work 60 hours a week, how much money are you making?
That's 1,200.
$1,200. Okay, last one. 2 people can shovel a driveway in 40 minutes. How long would it take for 3 people to shovel the same driveway? That one's definitely inverse. Because if it's the same length of driveway and you add more people, you get it done faster. So this is xy is equal to k. So you have 2 times 40 is equal to k. So k is equal to 80. So that means I have xy is equal to 80. So then I have 3y is equal to 80. Divide by 3. Y would equal what? Approximately.
Like 20.
20 and 2/3.
26
26.3 repeating minutes. So about 26 minutes. And that's pretty much all there is to variation. All right, so you guys got a solid 40 minutes. You can work on your review, your journal, your Delta math, anything you want to do, as long as you're being productive and not screwing around. All right.